Alright everyone, welcome back. If you're struggled up in bed trying to drift off, maybe leave the lights on for this one. Tonight, we're venturing into the dark places of our national parks to talk about people who didn't come home. It's a strange contrast, being warm and safe under your blankets while hearing about the places where the forest takes everything. So, sip your tea, get comfortable, and let's go. I constantly find myself thinking about the Glico Morinaga incident. It remains an entirely unsolved mystery in Japanese crime history, and the details are absolutely baffling. Over 17 months, a shadowy syndicate calling itself the Monster with 21 Faces carried out a ruthless kidnapping and product tampering campaign. The crime spree started with the brazen abduction of a candy company president. It rapidly escalated to threats of mass poisoning, with the group claiming they had compromised candy sold nationwide. The culprits relentlessly taunted the police. They sent mocking letters. They evaded capture entirely. This failure happened despite an investigation involving over 1 million officers. The police pursued hundreds of thousands of leads, but never identified the perpetrators. I actually double-checked that officer count because it sounds completely impossible. More than 1 million officers participated in the investigation in some capacity between 1984 and 2000. The case closed officially in the year 2000. The incident started on March 18, 1984. Two masked men broke into the home of Katsuhisa Ezaki. He was the president of Ezaki Glico, the company known for making Pocky and other popular treats. Around 9 in the evening, the intruders tied up Ezaki's wife and his young daughter. They abducted the executive straight from his bathtub. They drove him to a desolate warehouse in Osaka while he was still completely naked. The kidnappers quickly issued a ransom demand to the Glico Corporation. They asked for 1 billion yen in cash and 100 kilograms of solid gold bullion in exchange for Ezaki. I'd always found it fascinating that Ezaki managed to escape on his own. He broke out after about 3 days in captivity, long before the company paid any ransom. He could not identify his masked captors. The police had very few clues to follow. This dramatic abduction of a corporate executive sent shockwaves through Japan and set the stage for the bizarre events that followed. In the anxious weeks after Ezaki escaped, Glico faced more attacks. Unknown individuals set several company vehicles on fire in the factory lot. On April 16, 1984, someone left a plastic container filled with highly corrosive hydrochloric acid inside a Glico office building in Ibaraki. This was the exact same city where the kidnappers had held Ezaki. These acts of calculated sabotage clearly targeted the company's leadership. Around the same time, letters started arriving. The culprits revealed their bizarre alias, the Monster with 21 Faces. They borrowed that name loosely from a villain in classical Japanese fiction. Starting in April, the group sent a barrage of mocking letters to the police and the media. They openly ridiculed the authorities for failing to catch them. In one message addressed to the police, the writer arrogantly asked if they were stupid. The letter challenged them to act like professionals and catch the group. I have to assume the original Japanese sounded much more menacing. They even provided cryptic hints about their methods. They casually mentioned the type of car and equipment used in the initial kidnapping. Those clues ultimately proved entirely useless. The writers used a distinct Osaka dialect. Newspapers published the brazen letters, which massively amplified public interest in the ongoing case. In May 1984, the Monster with 21 Faces escalated the situation by threatening the national food supply. On May 10th, the group sent a letter to Glico's management claiming they had laced candies with a deadly cyanide compound. They warned they would place these poisoned candies on store shelves if the company refused their demands. This severe threat forced Glico to initiate a nationwide product recall. Supermarkets hastily emptied their shelves of Glico sweets. Consumers actively avoided the brand. Investigators never found any cyanide-laced Glico products. The threat appears to have been a very well-executed bluff. The scare still inflicted massive financial damage on the company. Glico reportedly lost the equivalent of $20 million. The company had to lay off hundreds of workers. In a country where lifetime employment was the norm, this humiliated the executives. The Monster with 21 Faces seemed to truly revel in the chaos. One letter gloated over Glico's mounting financial losses. I get the strong impression the criminals' true goal was to upend large food companies rather than collect a simple ransom. By late June 1984, the shadowy group announced a sudden ceasefire. In a puzzling message dated June 26, they proclaimed they were forgiving Glico. The harassment of that specific company stopped abruptly. Some people heavily suspect Glico paid a ransom in secret. I have not found any concrete evidence to support that theory. Glico and the public breathed a massive sigh of relief. The Monster with 21 Faces was not finished, though. They just shifted their sinister focus to other prime targets. The extortionists quickly turned their attention to Morinaga and Company, another confectionery giant. In October 1984, the group sent a chilling letter addressed to the moms of the nation. It warned that 20 packages of Morinaga candy contained lethal sodium cyanide. This time, the threat was undeniably real. Police scrambled to search stores from Tokyo to Osaka. They found more than a dozen tampered candy packages on retail shelves. The group had indeed placed lethal doses of cyanide directly into popular Morinaga products. They actually affixed warning labels on the packages reading that the contents contained toxins. They apparently did this to prevent actual physical harm to consumers. Fortunately, no one consumed the poison. The sinister message was clear. The perpetrators teased that future packages might not have helpful labels. This terrifying discovery caused widespread fear. Retailers aggressively boycotted Morinaga products. The company slashed its daily production by 90% during the crisis. This financial hit was even harder than the one Glico suffered. The monster with 21 faces issued direct extortion demands to Morinaga's leadership. On November 1st, 1984, the Morinaga vice president received a terrifying letter. It threatened to destroy the company if they did not pay 200 million yen. That ransom amounted to about $850,000 in 1984. Adjusting for modern inflation, that equals roughly $2.5 million today. The letter gave detailed instructions on how Morinaga should signal compliance. It told them to place a missing person ad containing a coded message in a specific daily newspaper on a certain date. Morinaga dutifully followed the bizarre instructions. They ran the ad with the secret keywords on November 6th. They effectively agreed to pay the money. The criminals never showed up to collect their prize. Around this highly chaotic time, the group expanded their severe threats to regional firms. They sent very similar letters to Marudai Ham and House Food Corporation. In June 1984, an undercover police officer posed as a Marudai employee. He attempted a high-stakes ransom drop of 50 million yen. He quickly noticed a suspicious man with fox-like eyes monitoring him from the shadows. Police strongly believe this unknown individual was the actual mastermind. The man managed to elude capture. The ongoing inability to catch the group became a profound embarrassment for law enforcement. The frustrating cat-and-mouse game continued deep into mid-1985. The criminals repeatedly sent letters. The police accumulated failure after failure. The immense stress of the situation culminated in a truly tragic event. In August 1985, Superintendent Shoji Yamamoto, the esteemed head of the Shiga Prefectural Police, set himself on fire out of sheer shame and professional remorse. Just 5 short days later, on August 12, 1985, the extortionists sent their final message. They coldly derided Yamamoto as stupid. They surprisingly declared they would halt their campaign. The typed letter announced they had decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. It claimed that any similar future crimes would merely be the work of copycats. The group's parting words were fittingly smug. They wrote that they were the bad guys, and that it was fun to lead a bad man's life. The monster with 21 faces vanished just as mysteriously as they had arrived. The horrific crime spree that terrorized the candy industry for 17 months finally ended. The perpetrators were absolutely never heard from again. In the long aftermath, the investigation went completely cold. The legal statute of limitations on the initial kidnapping of Katsuhisa Izaki expired in 1994. By 2000, all possible criminal charges related to the case reached their legal time limits. In February 2000, the National Police Agency formally conceded defeat. This was an unprecedented admission of total failure. Authorities never once identified the culprits. People have proposed many wild theories over the years about who exactly was behind these events. Investigators explored a very wide range of possibilities. No single theory has ever been proven. I will dive into the most plausible theories on this strange case. One prominent theory suggests an organized crime group, specifically a Yakuza gang, orchestrated the massive extortion campaign. The elaborate planning led police to initially suspect heavy Yakuza involvement. Kidnapping a CEO requires serious logistical power. One early suspect was Manabu Miyazaki. He was the son of a known Yakuza boss. He bore a striking resemblance to composite sketches of the infamous fox-eyed suspect. He had a documented history of anti-police activism and a past dispute with Glico. This made him seem like a very plausible mastermind. Police definitively cleared Miyazaki after he provided solid alibis. No direct links to any Yakuza organization were ever legally proven. While the Yakuza engage in corporate extortion, they typically operate covertly for profit rather than drawing intense police attention with public taunts. The monster with 21 faces behaved in a way entirely atypical of traditional organized crime. Investigators found no solid evidence implicating an established gang. Organized crime involvement remains a possibility. If a Yakuza group participated, they acted very much out of character. They were extraordinarily careful to leave absolutely no physical trace. Another fascinating line of speculation points to someone with intimate inside knowledge acting out a bitter vendetta. Some thought a deeply disgruntled Glico employee might have sought revenge against the company's leadership. Glico's president had been involved in a contentious labor dispute a decade earlier. This pointed heavy suspicion toward individuals connected to that incident. Others quietly questioned if Izaki himself staged the entire kidnapping. Izaki firmly denied the absurd implication. Police totally cleared him. People whispered about possible leaks from within law enforcement itself. The culprits always remained one step ahead of the cops. No proof of a police insider ever surfaced. Given the enormous number of officers involved, an internal leak remains a very real possibility. Exhaustive interviews with company staff did not yield any viable suspects. An inside job cannot be entirely ruled out. Alternative theories claim rival companies engaged in severe corporate sabotage to damage Glico and Morinaga. The confectionery market is incredibly big business. Glico's near-crippling losses could have massively benefited its direct competitors. One variant of this theory suggests a calculated stock manipulation scheme. An opportunistic investor might have shorted Morinaga's stock. They knew the share value would plunge rapidly once the poisonings became public. They could have escaped with a massive profit. Morinaga's stock did fall drastically during the ensuing panic. This could have yielded huge profits for anyone forewarned. Investigators closely examined individuals who traded heavily in those specific stocks. They found no conclusive evidence of such a plot. This strategy has a major glaring flaw. Any large fortuitous trade would have immediately set off regulatory alarm bells. Anyone with sufficient market knowledge to short stocks aggressively in the 1980s would have keenly known this issue. Despite the plural 21 Faces moniker, some wonder if the mastermind was a brilliant lone wolf, acting on a twisted personal agenda. The dramatic theatrical flair hints at a vigilantism element. Some speculate this was someone driven by a deep personal sense of superiority over the authorities. The letters openly displayed a game-like attitude toward outwitting the police. This suggests a potential lone wolf who derived a twisted thrill from the chase itself. Perhaps the most culturally interesting theory suggests the entire thing was a coordinated North Korean psychological attack on the Japanese populace. North Korean agents absolutely abducted Japanese citizens in the 1980s. They definitely had the covert resources for such sprawling operations. Ultimately, every single theory hits the exact same wall. There is a total lack of solid proof. The true identity of the perpetrators sadly remains completely unknown to me, and to the world at present. I want to tell you about Stephen Clark. He was 54 years old, a really devoted father who lived in Wareham, Dorset, England. People in that tight-knit community genuinely liked him. He was a cheerful guy. But lately he had been dealing with some incredibly tough health problems. Doctors diagnosed him with Huntington's disease. If you are not familiar with it, it is a severe hereditary condition that breaks down brain function over time. His family watched it slowly take a toll on his memory and his coordination. They stepped up, doing absolutely everything they possibly could to make sure he stayed comfortable and happy. Then, late January 2023 came around and sheer panic set in. On the morning of January 6th, Steve went about his regular routine. People saw him in a local shop in Wareham right around 9 a.m. About an hour later, locals spotted him standing outside the Garden Gate Tea Room at 10 a.m. But Stephen never made it back home. Naturally, his family panicked and frantically called the Dorset police. Because of his highly vulnerable health, officers treated it as an emergency right away and launched a massive search. They checked CCTV cameras, which picked up his very last steps. He was walking slowly down Bell's Orchard Lane near 11 a.m. After that entirely mundane moment, he just vanished. Nobody has seen or heard from him since. The people in Wareham really rallied around his devastated famine. Dorset police teamed up with the Coast Guard, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, and the Hampshire Search and Rescue Team to scour the area. Police heavily suspect he might have accidentally slipped into the River Frome or the River Piddle. Searchers dragged both rivers for miles. They found absolutely nothing. Now, investigators are begging anyone driving through Wareham on January 6th to check their personal dash cameras. They have meticulously combed through more than 400 homes and yards, but they still have zero leads. Steven is a white man with brown hair, standing exactly 5 feet 1 inch tall. He has a slim build and walks with a very distinct golden walking stick. If you have any information at all, please call the Dorset Police on 101, quoting case number 5523-001-4390. Now we move forward to the evening of December 28, 2022, to talk about Peter Bagland. He lifted himself off the sofa and told his wife Michelle that he was heading out for a walk. He promised he would be back soon. Over a month later, he is still missing. Peter was 55 years old. He and Michelle have been married for more than 20 years. He even had her name tattooed right there on his neck. They built a quiet, comfortable life in Greater Manchester. Doting on their 4 grandchildren, they had actually just finished celebrating the birth of their very first great-grandchild. According to Michelle, there was absolutely nothing out of the ordinary that night, nothing that would make her think he was walking out of her life forever. It was a normal routine for Peter to wander down the local canal towpath in the evenings, just walking and listening to his music. At 7:38 p.m., a CCTV camera caught him at a Texaco garage over in Moseley Common, buying a bottle of whiskey. Roughly 35 minutes passed before Michelle decided to call his phone just to check in. Peter answered. He told her he was strolling along the Bridgewater Canal, trying to clear his head. He never actually specified what was bothering him, though. Michelle was worried, naturally, but he reassured her he would be home soon. His final words on that call, "I love you, you are my world, he never came home." When Michelle tried calling him again, the phone just rang out. She immediately reported him missing to the police. The very next day, a chilling discovery was made along the canal towpath. Searchers found Peter's phone, his hat, his earphones, all sitting together. It seemed entirely possible, likely even, that he had slipped and fallen into the freezing canal. This prompted a massive police underwater search covering that entire stretch of water. More than 200 local volunteers joined the physical search efforts along the banks. Nothing. No further clues materialized. The sheer absence of any other belongings he might have had on him only deepened the mystery. Where did he go? His family firmly believes that somebody out there knows exactly what happened to him or where he is right now. They are desperately urging anyone with even a fragment of information to contact Greater Manchester Police at 101, or you can call Crime Stoppers at 0800-555-111. If you are looking out for him, Peter is 5 feet 10 inches tall. He has gray hair, and do not forget that distinctive tattoo on the left side of his neck. Well, let us start in 1976 with Sherry Roach. She was a 17-year-old girl living in a group home in San Mateo, California. She had endured a deeply turbulent childhood, growing up in Santa Rosa in what her younger brother Jerry described as a violently unstable household. This instability drove Sherry into the foster system, bouncing between multiple group homes just to find some basic safety. You know, these environments were far from ideal. Sherry ran away frequently, a coping mechanism, basically. Despite all this chaos, she held on to one constant: her brother. Whenever she took off, she would always, without fail, reach out to let Jerry know she was okay. Right? That was her pattern. By June of 1976, she was still based in San Mateo. She had managed to secure a part-time job over in San Francisco, a distance of roughly 20 miles. To get to work, she relied heavily on public transit or hitchhiking, which, was pretty standard for teenagers in the 1970s. Then came the morning of June 8, 1976. Sherry walked out of her group home to catch her usual bus into the city. Just another ordinary commute, except she never made it back. A counselor eventually reported her missing after she failed to return from her shift. So what did the San Mateo Police Department do? They launched an investigation, though by modern standards it was frustratingly bare bones. Listen to Detective Tom Paulin speaking about this back in February 2020. The officers back in 1976 did a cursory interview with some people that either worked with her or that knew of her, and there were not any substantial leads at that particular time. Basically, they wrote her off. Reading between the lines, it is obvious they pegged her as just another runaway. Because she lacked a strong family unit to aggressively advocate for her, the case quickly went cold. Yes, she had a documented history of running away. You can see why authorities leaned that direction. But remember her brother? The fact that absolutely no one heard from Sherry after June 1976 was an enormous red flag. This sudden silence shattered her usual pattern. She had not just started over somewhere new. Something terrible, something final had intercepted her. The investigation stalled and never formally closed. Given her reliance on hitchhiking, detectives had to consider the darkest possibilities. Like a predator targeting young, vulnerable women along the highway. True crime historians know exactly what California was like in the 1970s. Ground zero for serial predators. They even cross-referenced her name with the November 1978 Jonestown tragedy down in Guyana, since a huge number of victims were from the Bay Area. Nothing. Her name was not on the manifest. Decades slipped by. Nothing happened until 2020. Out of nowhere, a startling new clue surfaced. Sherry's mother, still living in Northern California, was sorting through some old family boxes. She found a photograph. Written on the back, 1975, the image showed a teenage Sherry standing beside an unidentified young man, his arm draped casually over her shoulders. Why does this matter? Because no one in her family had ever seen this picture. They had zero idea who the man was. Sure, relatives remembered vague rumors from the 70s about an older boyfriend, but they never had a name, they never had a face. Suddenly, they had a snapshot that was likely one of the very last pictures taken of Sherry before she vanished. That man instantly became a person of interest. In February 2020, San Mateo police released the photograph to the public, hoping someone, somewhere, could name him. Authorities described him as a black male, likely in his early 20s, standing around 6 feet tall. To be clear, police have not officially labeled him a suspect, but given his obvious proximity to Sherry shortly before she disappeared, he is absolutely an important witness. Yet, despite the widespread release of the image, the silence continues. No new evidence. The man remains a ghost. Let us move on to the case of Lucinda Miller. On October 16, 2022, security cameras recorded her in southeast Melbourne. It was exactly 11 a.m. She wore a warm jacket and a beanie. Less than an hour after that footage was taken, she disappeared entirely. She left her loved ones terrified and completely baffled. Lucinda was exactly 24 years old at the time. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight recently, and some reports mentioned she might have been dealing with some underlying health problems. Right after she appeared on that camera, Lucinda ordered an Uber. The driver dropped her off about 30 minutes later near Belgrave. I should mention, this is a heavily wooded, remote bushland area. It sits roughly 2.5 kilometers from her actual house. There's a hiking trail right there that easily could have led her straight home. Except, she never arrived. At first, her close family and friends did not panic, but by the next day, a friend put out an urgent plea online, asking anyone who saw her to immediately call the police or an ambulance. A week passed. The media picked up the story. Then a deeply worrying detail came out. Someone had intentionally turned off her phone the day after she vanished. Every incoming call went straight to voicemail. Search teams focused hard on the remote bushland where the Uber dropped her off. But as days went by, it looked like she had actively walked right out of that zone. A day after the original camera footage, someone claimed they saw her 8 kilometers away in Bayswater East. Police expanded their massive search grid immediately. Still, there was absolutely no sign of her. Investigators believed the sighting was credible, but they never found any video evidence to physically back it up. The trail went completely cold. Even so, her friends stubbornly kept organizing their own desperate searches. Police came out and stated they definitively do not think anyone else was involved. They cleared the helpful Uber driver right away. The terrifying reality is that it looked like she simply did not want to be found. But surviving out in those harsh elements without proper shelter, the odds were awful. Then in November, 2 highly compelling reports came in. On November 5th, someone matching Lucinda perfectly was seen way down in Portland, southwest Victoria. 3 short days later, another credible person spotted her in Colac. Lucinda is 5'5", blonde, and has a very thin build. She was last seen wearing pink pants. During that Colac sighting, witnesses noted she was actively pushing a black shopping cart. If you have any idea where Lucinda Miller is right now, please instantly call local police at 56-222-7111. Her devoted family is completely desperate for answers. We shift our focus halfway across the globe, to Childers, a town in Queensland, Australia. Investigators there recently released important security footage of an 82-year-old man named Peter Hodgkins. He vanished without a trace, and authorities are completely desperate to locate him. Peter disappeared on May 19, 2024. No one has seen or heard a single word from him since that day. The local police have issued an urgent, widespread appeal, begging the public to keep their eyes open. Let us look at his last known movements. The final confirmed sighting comes from a CCTV camera mounted outside an aged care facility on Morgan Street. The footage shows Peter exiting the building at precisely 6:46 p.m. Reports indicate he began walking south, heading in the direction of Broadhurst Street. After that, the trail goes totally cold. He has not made contact with a single friend or family member. If you watch the video closely, you see Peter walking out alongside another man. Peter stops. He points off into the distance while chatting with this unidentified individual. The problem is, the camera angle cuts off. We cannot see which direction Peter actually took after that conversation ended. The moment he was reported missing, a massive search grid was established around the care home. We are talking drones in the sky, trail bikes ripping through the scrub, and dozens of people on foot. They found absolutely nothing. Not a single belonging. The hunt is still very much active today. Investigators are pleading with anyone living in the immediate area to scrub through their private security cameras. Any scrap of footage from that evening could establish a concrete timeline. It could pinpoint his direction of travel, giving search teams a much better chance of bringing him home. There is also a running theory that Peter might have traveled toward the Townsville area. Residents up there have been warned to stay highly vigilant. Emergency responders are growing more terrified by the hour. Time is the enemy here. Peter suffers from dementia, he is highly vulnerable, and the temperatures in Queensland are already starting to plummet with the arrival of the Southern Hemisphere winter. He is described as a frail older man. Surviving out in the harsh elements for this long is a horrific thought. Police have thrown every single resource they have at this case. But so far, nothing.
Tank.
Intensive sweeps through the dense bushland surrounding the aged care facility turned up completely empty. This has led to another theory. What if a well-meaning motorist saw an elderly man walking along the road and offered him a lift? A driver who had no idea they were picking up an active missing person. Hope flared briefly when police received a tip-off about a sighting on Thompson Road. Officers swarmed the area. They knocked on doors, searched surrounding properties. They never found him. To this day, nobody actually knows if the man spotted on Thompson Road was even Peter. To streamline the operation, authorities have set up a dedicated search and rescue headquarters right out of the Childers Police Station, processing tips in real time. If you want to volunteer for the physical ground search, you can just contact the station directly. When he walked out of that facility, CCTV shows Peter wearing a pair of blue jeans, a blue polo shirt, brown shoes, and a heavy dark coat. If you have seen this man, if you have any idea where he might be resting today, you are strongly urged to call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-333-000. You can also log on to the Police Link website and submit a suspicious activity form. Please, make the call. I also want to discuss a missing persons case that has always bothered me. In 2014, police from the Isle of Wight in the United Kingdom urgently appealed to the public. They needed citizens to look out for a 53-year-old woman who inexplicably went missing. Over a decade later, she has still not been found. On June 7, 2014, Victoria Bailey boarded the number 12 bus. She traveled to a coastal area called Freshwater and calmly got off. Definitive CCTV footage from the bus proved this. After she went missing, investigators reviewed the tape. The clip clearly shows Victoria getting on the bus and paying her fare. It later shows her leaving the bus and walking away entirely on her own. She does not appear to be in any distress whatsoever. This makes her sudden disappearance all the more baffling. When police formally learned Victoria vanished, they organized a massive search. They covered the immediate area and the nearby ocean. They spent several long days searching, but were entirely unsuccessful in locating her. Investigators formally released a photo of the exact cell phone model she carried. It was a silver or black Samsung GTE 2550. Searchers have never found the phone. At 9 in the morning on June 19th, a frantic witness contacted the police. The caller reported spotting Victoria. She was supposedly walking on New Barn Road toward York Avenue in East Cowes. The witness explicitly stated the woman wore a purple blouse and black capri pants. This tip prompted another massive search of the area. Once again, searchers found no sign of Victoria. It remains entirely unknown whether the woman seen that morning was actually Victoria. Police interviewed people in the immediate area. No one had seen the woman in question. Following this, Victoria's desperate family made an emotional appeal to the public for absolutely any information. People heavily speculated she might have walked the Tennyson Trail. That is a highly challenging 14-mile hike stretching from Carisbrooke to the Needles. No evidence has ever been found that she actually entered the trail. Her sister, Lisa Lauren, made a public appeal directly to Victoria. She pleaded with her sister to contact the family just to assure them she was fine. Lisa added that Victoria did not have to disclose her actual location. The family just desperately wanted to hear from her. With practically no further leads, police pleaded with other passengers on the number 12 bus to come forward. They asked for any tiny piece of information, such as where Victoria might have gone after getting off. They speculated she might have spoken to a fellow passenger and mentioned her plans for the day. Nobody has ever come forward with additional information. Victoria was last seen wearing a beige jacket over a dark top. She also wore blue jeans and sunglasses. She actively carried a backpack. Investigators heavily believe she may have changed her outfit since she was last seen on camera. If you have seen Victoria or have absolutely any information on her cold case, I strongly urge you to contact the Newport Police Station. You can reach them by dialing 101. You should refer to case number 44142577. I have spent considerable time researching the Knights Templar. They are a highly famous medieval military order subject to wild legends and endless theories. One of the most persistent claims is that the powerful Templars secretly worshipped a mysterious idol called Baphomet. This was a severe charge first levied against them during their dramatic 14th century trials. The term Baphomet actually appeared decades before the trials even began. It emerged during the Bloody Crusades. In a 1098 letter, a crusader described Muslim Turks calling upon Baphomet at the grueling siege of Antioch. Most modern scholars interpret this as a simple corruption of the name Muhammad. Medieval European crusaders generally mischaracterized Islam as pure idolatry. They wrongfully believed Muslims worshipped Muhammad as an actual god. By the late 13th and early 14th century, Baphomet fully entered the Christian lexicon. It became a dark term denoting a pagan or false idol. Against this tense historical backdrop, the Knights Templar suddenly fell under deep suspicion. On October 13, 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the shocking mass arrest of Templars operating in his country. His massive financial debts to the incredibly wealthy order largely motivated this drastic move. He basically harbored a deep desire to outright seize their valuable assets. Philip operated with the willing cooperation of Pope Clement V's inquisitors. He aggressively accused the Templars of numerous vile heresies. The authorities leveled over 100 distinct charges against the order. These included denying Christ, spitting on the Holy Cross, and illicit practices. Worshipping an idol named Baphomet featured prominently among the accusations. Many of these harsh charges closely mirrored those earlier aimed at other bitter enemies of the church, such as the Cathars. This heavily suggests the inquisitors used a convenient template of charges rather than investigating unique misdeeds. Under the extreme pressure of physical torture and brutal imprisonment by the medieval Inquisition, some Templars eventually confessed. The idol of Baphomet featured in several of these forced confessions. The descriptions varied wildly. According to the official trial records, different Templars gave highly contradictory accounts. Some described a severed head, others mentioned an idol possessing 3 faces. Others spoke of a human skull, or even a strange cat figure as the main object of veneration. I must strictly note that no physical idol or tangible evidence of Baphomet was ever produced. The name Baphomet did not even appear in the initial royal arrest warrants or the formal papal charges. Those early documents only generically accused the Templars of the adoration of idols. The highly specific name emerged solely from the brutal interrogations. This heavily suggests the leading questions or paranoid expectations of the inquisitors drove the entire narrative. Of 231 knights relentlessly interrogated in Paris, only 12 confessed to knowing absolutely anything about Baphomet. That is barely 5%. Far greater numbers confessed to much more routine claims of blasphemy. This vast disparity clearly indicates that the Baphomet charge was not widely substantiated, even under extreme physical duress. The zealous inquisitors did not take this to mean that Baphomet did not exist. They bizarrely concluded the Templars held Baphomet so dear they would simply refuse to name the precious idol. During the lengthy trials, many Templars bravely withdrew or recanted their false confessions when they were away from the torture chambers. Contemporaries were often highly skeptical of the outlandish accusations. Even Pope Clement V initially doubted Philip's wild allegations. Outside of France, papal investigations in regions like England, Portugal, and the Holy Roman Empire found practically little evidence of heresy. Many accused Templars in those specific regions were eventually exonerated or given very light penances. In France, Philip's immense political pressure prevailed. The Templars' Grand Master Jacques de Molay dramatically retracted his forced confession after years of brutal imprisonment. He firmly declared the ancient order's total innocence. For his astounding audacity, the authorities mercilessly put him to the torch in 1314. Modern historians widely agree that the Templars' supposed worship of Baphomet was an entirely false charge lacking any genuine historical proof. The overwhelming consensus is that the confessions were heavily coerced and thoroughly unreliable. They relied completely upon the typical brutal methods associated with the infamous Inquisition. Many historical contemporaries did not believe the Baphomet confessions were legitimate at all. They did suspect that many Templars had quietly become crypto-Muslims. Modern historians generally dismiss the idea that the Templars would en masse adopt the strict doctrines of their mortal enemies. There were, however, rare cases of individual Templars converting to Islam. Robert of St. Albans, an English Templar, became Muslim and officially joined up with Saladin in the 1180s. He was granted the rare right to marry one of Saladin's relatives for his treasonous action. These isolated acts profoundly shocked Christendom. They may have eventually led to the festering idea that Templars harbored a secret sympathy for their sworn enemies. No credible evidence has ever emerged that the Templars literally venerated anything called Baphomet. Although the Church dissolved the mighty Templars and subsequently exonerated them in later years, the lurid idea of their dark occult practices did not vanish. After long centuries of obscurity, the Baphomet legend revived heavily in the 19th century amid a huge resurgence of interest in the Templars, Freemasonry, and the occult. Enlightenment and Romantic era writers began wildly speculating about what hidden ancient wisdom the Templars might have possessed. In 1818, the Austrian Orientalist Joseph von Hammer-Purgstall published a controversial essay. He falsely claimed to have found actual Templar Baphomet idols. He loosely linked the order to obscure Gnostic sects. A major turning point came with the French occultist Eliphas Levi right in the mid-19th century. He famously illustrated Baphomet as the Sabbatic goat. This was a winged, goat-headed androgynous figure heavily laden with esoteric symbolism. Levi took the ancient name Baphomet and entirely transformed it into a complex symbol of cosmic balance in his own occult philosophy. Levi genuinely believed that Templars had used the name. Since that specific time, Levi's iconic goat-like depiction of Baphomet has easily become the best-known image of this fictional entity. I think it is highly important to remember that the Sabbatic goat was never historically associated with the actual Templars. It was not based on contemporary Inquisition accusations either. The idea that the Templars worshipped a demon named Baphomet is a complete myth. It just happens to be a very powerful myth that still carries a ton of cultural weight almost a full millennium later. The mysterious disappearance of a young man named Greg Weiss Jr. On March 21, 2000, Greg calmly left his father's home, located in Princeton, Louisiana. He fully intended to visit a close friend in the nearby small community of Taylortown. Someone last physically saw him in the early evening of that day. He was driving his truck on U.S. Highway 71 right near the busy intersection with Willis Road and Highway 527. According to a friend, someone reportedly dropped Greg off at a local bar situated along Louisiana Highway 1 later that exact same evening. After that highly specific point, Greg Weiss Jr. simply vanished. He was absolutely never heard from again. His family quickly grew concerned when they finally realized he had not safely returned home or contacted anyone. They officially reported him missing to the authorities. A few short days after Greg's unsettling disappearance, on March 24th, 2000, authorities made a critical discovery. Police suddenly found Greg's dark brown 1984 Chevy pickup truck completely abandoned on a desolate roadside in the Taylortown area. Investigators safely found Greg's wallet and his other personal belongings inside the locked vehicle. They found absolutely no sign of Greg himself. The aging truck appeared to be in perfectly working condition. There were practically no immediate physical indications of a violent struggle at the scene. His functional vehicle and wallet were simply left behind. This strongly suggested something entirely unexpected had happened. Given these highly suspicious circumstances, the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office very quickly began treating Greg Weiss's sudden disappearance as a highly possible case of foul play. In the long days and weeks following Greg's disappearance, dedicated law enforcement officers undertook extensive efforts to finally find him. They thoroughly interviewed the friend who last saw Greg. They aggressively followed up on the initial account that someone casually left Greg at a busy bar on Highway 1 that night. Investigators thoroughly canvassed the bar and all surrounding areas. They desperately hoped to find anyone who might have actually seen Greg after he was purportedly dropped off. They sadly found absolutely no evidence that he was ever even there. Police also extensively searched the immediate vicinity where they found Greg's pickup truck abandoned. They looked for literally any clues or trace evidence. They found absolutely no further information. As of right now, I have found essentially no solid indication as to what may have ultimately happened to Greg. His haunting case has attracted surprisingly very little attention in the media and online over the years. I feel strongly that we need to keep talking about cases like his so they are not entirely forgotten.